Yeah, once again, welcome all to our class today. As usual, this is a conscious and study group, a philosophical class. We meet every Thursday to read and study the philosophy of Kwame Nkrumah. So join us for our reading today. Thank you and feel most welcome. Brother Carrington, kindly do for us the reading. I don't know if you do a paragraph or we combine all of them, but I've shared all of them in the text. But just do all of them because I think they're
Okay,
connected.
fine. Okay, fine. I will. Yeah. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters. I hope you're well. I hope the day has taken you well. And I hope it has been productive in whatever activities you've engaged in. So we will read the 3 paragraphs. I'll try to be as slow and as deliberate as possible. And then we can proceed with our analysis from there. It has not been my purpose to argue that all the early precursors of our modern philosophers in trying to modify or support a modification of society conceived this in terms of egalitarianism. But even when they pursued a social line in reaction to the egalitarian line, they were still responding to social urges and social conditions. In a genuine sense, their philosophies were intellectual reflections of contemporary social conditions. One example of an early philosopher who became reactionary with respect to, it's supposed to be to, the egalitarian development was Plato. Socrates, judges and executioners were not half as cruel to him as was his betrayer Plato, also his loving disciple. Whereas Socrates had affirmed the original equal endowment of men and explained differences between men in terms of education, Plato was no believer in the fundamental equality of man. He held to the original inequality of men, which an unrelenting educational system would quickly reveal. He held that some men had a higher reason than others, and though education might up to a point conceal them, these differences were bound to reveal themselves after a certain stage of thoroughgoing education. These differences in the level of intelligence, according to Plato, implied a natural division of hierarchy of labor, each man being fitted by nature for functions appropriate to him. The less intelligent being, in fact, only qualified to undertake menial forms of labor. All political and social power was at the same time to be concentrated in the hands of the intellectuals in trust. In this way, Plato adumbrated an unconscionable totalitarianism of intellectuals.
Thank you, Brother Carrington. So we will be going piece by piece and start by the first paragraph, and then we'll move to the second paragraph. But we intend to do all the reading of the 3 paragraphs and discuss them. And thank you once again to those who have joined us today. So permit me to reread the first paragraph where we start to put our concentration and ask people to share their thinking in regards to that, as we will be moving slowly once we're done with that to the second paragraph. Brother Carrington has read all 3 paragraphs that we intend to be reading and discussing today. So let me reread the first paragraph once again. The first paragraph says that it has not been my purpose to argue that all the early precursors of our modern philosophers in trying to modify or support a modification of society conceived this in terms of egalitarianism. But even when they pursued a social line in reaction to the egalitarian line, they were still responding to social argues and social condition. In a genuine sense, their philosophies were intellectual reflection of contemporary social conditions. Brother Carrington.
Yes, Brother PG?
Last time you ended the contribution by sharing your thinking last. I don't know if you'll be willing to start sharing your thinking in this, maybe if you connect it to where we've come from.
Yes, let me try.
Okay.
Just one short sentence because as we continue, we will continue to contextualize it. But the idea is simple here. He's trying, the Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah, he's trying to summarize what his interpretation of the philosophers he has discussed right now. In the previous few pages, this is a sort of early philosophy chapter up to now. So there has been this argument that the Osagefo has been trying to put that philosophies of the world developed by philosophers, developed by social theorists, are basically responses, implicit sometimes, most of the time actually, explicit sometimes, responses to social conditions and social forces. So he's trying to say that he's not trying to put it so directly that these philosophers, as they go along, the pre-Socratics, then Socrates himself, and then the post-Socratics, as they go along, they're not explicitly modeling their philosophies on the basis of how it responds to social equality. But nonetheless, all these philosophies developed by these philosophers is the result, in fact, or at least is the result of social conditions and makes implicit statements about social conditions. So when you say human beings are fundamentally equal, it has certain implications for how you should organize society. You cannot organize society, for example, using a monarchy if you believe all human beings are equal. Because what makes the king so special? Unless the king is holding power in trust, as we will see later, Plato tries to argue, for the rest of the people. Otherwise, you would have more democratic council of elder type systems, right? So in a way, these philosophers are permanently embedded in their societies. And therefore, anything they say about human nature will emerge from the conditions of these respective societies. And this is what we've seen with the trader philosopher. I forget his name. Brother Pigeon, maybe remind me. This guy who used to work with olives.
What is that? Oh, Anaximander.
And is it Thales? I think it's Thales.
There was Thales and Anaximander. Yeah, Thales was the one who was
Yes, was the wealthy one.
Ionian.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was Thales.
Yes. So because of this, because of the increasing mercantile nature of the Greek state that he lived in, first he reorganized his entire universe around water, because to him water was powerful. And then secondly, his philosophies tended to reduce the power of aristocracies or monarchies or theocracies in the society. So this is the nature of all philosophers in general. And this is the argument the Osagefo is trying to put across here.
So thank you, Brother Karin. So when he says that his purpose is not to argue that all the precursors were trying actually to conceive or modify egalitarianism in a society, basically, as you're saying, I think you said it when he said that it was Thales who was appearing to be more of like a bourgeoisie. And there's somewhere where they were saying that the so-called democracy was putting more of like the ruling class into a democratic state, which was then not basically the reality in terms of real egalitarianism. I think we also came through an argument that democracy could not provide what you call a convertible egalitarianism as vis-a-vis to socialism. So is Nkrumah trying to refute some of their argument in this paragraph, or what does it try to bring?
What he's trying to say is that these philosophers, in their attempt at modeling the world, do not explicitly engage with egalitarianism. So, for example, Thales is not sitting down and saying something like, I want society to be equal. So how can I arrange my philosophy of the world, of society, and of the universe so that society ends up being equal? This is not the nature of the revolutionary philosophies that they were advancing. However, the effect of the implicit arguments that they are making will be that there will be such social pressures, or the philosophies themselves will respond to social pressures. That is what he's trying to say. He's trying to say that this interaction is a little bit more complicated than just very direct. And as you've mentioned with, I think that was the guy who was talking about the universe coming from small equal parts, and that our differences come from differences in combinations of these parts, right? And we shall see later on with Plato. Actually, Plato, in the paragraph that I've just read, openly and explicitly rejects this form of egalitarianism. So it is not exactly true that it is linear or obvious that they are engaging with social order. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Brother Carrington. And to those of you us for the first time, that's what you do. We read a paragraph and we ask you to share your thinking. How do you understand it? So we are trying to focus our thinking in the first paragraph, even though we've read three of them and listed three of them. But feel free to read in between the line and share with us what you are thinking in regards to this paragraph. This is a continuation of Surgeon Dr. Kwame Nkrumah trying to analyze philosophy and society, just chapter 2 where we are in. And we are looking at a society. How does it look like? We've come across arguments of whether society is of egalitarianism, an equal society where all men are equal. We've come across Thales, who was trying to look at the Ionian system and society, where his basis was water. We've come across Anaximander, who was saying it was from formless and those other things. Then he bring aspect of social justice and equality and egalitarianism. In fact, it is Anaximander that come with the aspect of egalitarianism in the first aspect we've read before. Then we came across now Socrates, and we read last time Socrates the man and how he's trying to bring the aspect of virtue versus moral and those other things. So Nkrumah thing is right, almost trying to continue to analyze and give his perspective, having exposed this in this group, in this book. Nkrumah is trying to play or bring forth plainly how one philosopher thinks about his aspect vis-a-vis another philosopher. And that's what he's been doing all along, so that when he arrive at when he deduce or when he arrive at his own position, the position is informed of analyzing both positions. So he's not making an assumption without exposing and taking you clearly to understand both sides of the philosopher and what they think. So that's what we are going on with. So feel free to share your thinking. I'll be reading the names in the list, and feel free to come in and share your thinking anytime. Sister Myra?
I think this paragraph, the first paragraph, is saying kind of what Nkrumah has already established, that whatever philosophy is developed is underpinned by the social conditions of the time. But also that made me think that in analyzing any philosophy of a society, we then have to also understand what the philosophers or the thinkers of the time were thinking, because obviously then that means their the philosophy that was developed was it was seen through their eyes and their own experience of society at that time. For example, Plato seemed to be anti-egalitarian, while Socrates was the opposite. So, for me, in summary, it's reiterating what Nkrumah has said, that any philosophy comes out of whatever is happening in society at that time. But if thinkers and philosophers are humans that are also impacted in whatever society they live in, then to understand whatever philosophy you're analyzing, we need to also understand the thinkers and get to know them and understand what was driving them or where their biases came from. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Mara. Let me read my list again. Let me get to Sister Abigail. This is the first time you're joining us. Are you able to share your thinking in the paragraph you've read? How do you understand it was your thinking? If you're not able, you always have a time to say pass so that we can give you space to continue analyzing the text. Abigail?
Allow me, Jiro teacher, allow me to pass this time round, kindly.
Thank you. General Anunnaki?
Son of the Lake, my lord.
Yes, comrade. How is South Africa?
Yeah, I'm in South Africa, my lord.
Okay, great.
Okay, I must answer was based on what we read, most. Yeah?
Yeah, feel free to respond to the text.
Okay. No, the reason I'm asking is because you're asking me where I am, as if you wanted me to update you on what's happening in South Africa. Okay, it's fine. Let me go on the text straight. My thinking, so far, my thinking is that based on what you've read so far, even the other pages, for me, I can say this thing is still, yeah, it will sound bad for me to say this, but I do agree in a way with Plato, Plato was saying, because if you can look at the biology or the anatomy of the Homo sapiens and modern man, the African, hey, our level of intelligence is not the same. Yeah, and therefore there are certain jobs, even in the time of slavery and plantation, there are certain jobs that we black people were given. There are certain jobs that we black people were given that the Irish people, which were the predominant slaves of the British, couldn't do, you see? Because the so-called British said that the Irish were not fit for these jobs, and therefore these jobs were reserved for the black slaves. Yeah, so in a way, I would say he does have a sense in what he's saying. There are the hierarchy of labor, in a way, yeah, but it does have to do with differences of level of intelligence. Yeah, I'll stop from there for now. Thank you.
So, generally, you're trying to go contrary to the equality of men.
My king, men are equal. I agree with that. Men are equal, my brother. I'm also a staunch believer of that. But hey, science, like I say, science can be very cruel sometimes because the truth is the truth at the end of the day.
Okay. When you say the truth is the truth, scientists will confirm to us here. Whether, because we've come across from the beginning where we are understanding the concept that men are equal. On their DNA structure, they're all equal. But yes, it's very interesting where we are heading towards. So thank you for that. Let's get to Brother Coco. And greetings, comrade, brother. Greetings.
Greetings to you all tonight. Do you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, thank you very much. This is interesting. My own brother from the Xhosa kingdom is now actually saying man is not equal, or is not born equal. He's trying to agree with what the whites were using against us to enslave our people by saying men are not born equal. That's essentially what it's saying. It's saying
That's what Plato is saying. That's what Plato is saying in the third paragraph in this writing. Of course, what Brother General
that's
Gaspar is trying to affirm to.
yeah, that's what my brother is saying. And me and him, we come from essentially the same society that espouse Ubuntu. Motho ke motho ka batho, umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu abantu. So I'm surprised, but it's okay. Let me try to explain how I live here, where I live in the United Kingdom. Yes.
Before you go away with that, he's trying to put the argument Plato is putting here that if you look at intellectual capacity, not all men or women have the same intellectual capacity, either IQ or EQ. If you look at the masculine of a body, not all men and women can have the same masculinity. If you look at either the body sizes or whatever, which is actually the physical and mental aspect. But when we are coming from the egalitarianism of human being, we say that the structure of human being, on their DNA structure, whether white, black, women, whatever, there is no any being that is a lesser being. In the structure of the creation, all human beings possess all quality that makes them human. So here is an aspect that now try to categorize that human being that Plato is trying to bring in. So feel free to respond, but not that Spala is saying this, is what Plato is trying to bring in. Let's see how we can share our thinking to the text. So please proceed, brother.
That's fine, thank you. But I categorically deny that any men are born inferior to others, regardless of whether it's intellect, emotional, or whatever. All men are born equal. So the reason I was going to give that to you is that here, where I live in the United Kingdom, you find that majority of the Black people are in the trades industry. They are plumbers, electricians, and anything like that, or security jobs, because it's what they see us as their servants. And that comes from the belief that we are born inferior to them. Even if science disputes that, they still go against that to say they are born superior. So if you call intellect is not enough. It's not the whole of human intelligence. There are all other forms of intelligence. There is that cultural intelligence. There is emotional intelligence. There are many different forms of intelligence, my brother. And all men are endowed with that. It's a matter of how each one of them is helped to unlock them. But Plato, what he does is not different from what majority of other sellouts in Africa do. For instance, let's look at Blaise Compaoré. Blaise Compaoré is a very close friend of Thomas Sankara. And then in the end, he is the one who sells him out. I also shared something in the group about Mrs. Lumumba speaks. Mrs. Lumumba, he talks about Mobutu. She said, we knew Mobutu very well. We knew Joseph very well. He was friends with my husband. That's just late Patrice Lumumba. Lumumba's party paid for Mobutu to go and study journalism in Belgium. But when he comes back, he betrays Lumumba. He betrays the party. He betrays Pan-Africanism. It's a tragedy for all of us, just because Mobutu and the others, they wanted to live as kings in Africa. They wanted to live as whites in Africa. It's there in Walter Whitney. It's the same thing. Egalitarianism should not be confused with anarchism, where anarchism has that element of individualism, individualistic or subjectivism. As he said, if you read the previous paragraphs, then you will understand where Dr. Nkrumah is coming with all of this. So just to put the context of why he's talking about all of these Greek philosophers, people who don't even know their names. We are not meant to know their names, to memorize their names. We just have to remember what they're saying and why that is relevant to us. Because he was living in the time when the colonizers or everyone else had read philosophy, Greek philosophy, and the Greek philosophy was the in thing. So for you to be seen as someone who has read or someone who understands things, you needed to understand Greek philosophy. Hence why he brings Greek philosophy. He could have brought Mushomi's philosophy. We have a philosopher in Southern Africa called Mushomi, by the way. And Mushomi, and when he advised Moshoeshoe, the founding father of Lesotho, he said to him, don't kill anyone who is accused of witchcraft. Don't. Because that's one of those things which is used to dehumanize people. So it's a dehumanization of people to say this one is a witch. And you'll find that most of the time, those people who are said to be witches are like vulnerable, old women who stay alone. It's again subjectivism, individual subjectivism is there. It's those of us who think we have education now and we belong to an upper class and we can take that and rule over everyone else. It's no longer egalitarianism, but in this case, they have taken over from the gods. That's what the Greek philosophy at that time was. They took over from the gods, as Brother Carrington has rightly said, during the time of Thales, Anaxagoras, and all the others. They managed to take over from the ruling priestly class, which used to be, at that time, the rulers, and have shown that man can do lots of things with the materials that they are endowed with, and hence they introduce egalitarianism. And don't forget, in the previous reading, we had Socrates at Meno, trying to show that the slave boy was equally endowed as any one of them, any one of the citizens of that city where they were aristocrats, and hence they hated him for that, because then he was going to undermine the principle on which their superiority was based. It's more or less the same thing as what happened with the World War. The World War is not just that it bankrupted Europe. The World War actually exposed the Europeans in their element to all the other nations which the Europeans had ruled over for a long time. All right. So the black men went there and realized the white men are dying just like us. We are fighting close to them. We are actually even helping them. We are even stronger than them in several cases. All right. It's the same thing that happened here when we had Windrush. The Jamaicans, the Caribbeans were invited over to England to help rebuild England. But when they came here, they actually wanted them to do those jobs that I said, menial jobs, because they thought, why would a black man come and do a clerical work if whites are here? Because they did not want to relinquish that feeling of superiority or the superiority complex. But again, here were the African Caribbeans who came over to this country with degrees, with education from the Caribbean, and they were well educated. But that education meant nothing in this country because the color of their skin was what meant a lot. And all of that was based scientifically, in quotes, scientifically, on the color of skin or the shape of the nose. Don't forget that's what it used to be. You used to be judged on the color of your skin or the shape of your nose or the texture of your hair. That is what we are being told here. That's what those who think education gives them an edge are more or less doing the same thing. I came to this country I had worked in Lesotho for several years, I think 5 or more. I was an economist. I came here, I studied economics again to a master's degree. When I left university, I started to look for a job. And then that's when I realized, wow, whatever I did in Lesotho doesn't matter in this country. I had to start from scratch. It meant that they look at you and think, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are in this country? Go clean the toilets. Go scrub the floors. All right? That's where you belong. So I had to relearn the way that they do things here and reinvent myself, because that is the essence of the society here, is the foundation of white supremacy. White supremacy is based on the false supremacy of other races, or of one race over the others. And that saying education is better, it means if we are educated in Africa, then all our brothers who are not educated, who didn't go to school, are beneath us. That's false. I've met people who are very, very intelligent, and they haven't seen the inside of the classroom. I yield.
Okay, thanks. So, Brother Coco, to you, based on your analysis and also quoting the example, Socrates was bringing aspect of a slave boy to the conversation, which then, to Socrates' level of his thinking by that time, he was meaning that irrespective of the level of the job the boy was doing as a slave, couldn't make that person be a lesser being. They still found that he was equal, and he was trying to bring the equality aspect of the person in spite of the job they were doing. But here Plato then want to go back to the same, to classify people based on the job they do, based on the academic performance and everything else.
Yes.
So how do you find that in this aspect? Is it either contradicting egalitarianism, or it brings the aspect of classism and superiority and everything else in a society?
Yes.
And what do that tell to us?
So what it does is actually is a coup d'etat to egalitarianism. It's breaking the idea that all people are born equal down, and bringing class. It brings that hierarchy in place. And let's not forget that hierarchy is what has been exported to us as Africans. Africans were largely egalitarian, classless. Well, we had chiefs. Those chiefs, they were just custodians of the power vested in them by us as the people. But if you take what you see in England, most of the landed people were aristocrats. They were lords. They were the people with money. Everyone else were squatters. So that level of superiority complex doesn't start just with slavery. It started a long time ago. They practiced it and perfected it on Ireland. They went in Ireland and conquered Ireland and made the Irish subservient to them. Even today, the Republic of Ireland is still crying to unite that island and make it one. But England, which is now part of Greater United Kingdom, wants to hold the Northern Ireland as a separate entity. It's that classism, it's that hierarchy, which is the conflict that you see being brought here into Africa and giving us a problem we have right now. So the conservatives, the black conservatives in Africa, are those who want to live as white people in Africa. They've seen the white people living good in Africa. It's the same thing. We just have substituted blacks for whites. The colonialism goes on. We now serve black masters instead of white masters.
Okay, finally, Brother Coco. So do you think the context Brother Plato is bringing here never existed in our society? This aspect of intellectualism or job specialization, farmers, whatever? Or do you think even if it existed, it was never based that some people were lesser equal to be given either manual laboring, and some people were high to be given either the teaching and the rest? what do you think was then in the African setup?
So African setup was different in that we didn't have those specializations. When it was time to farm, all men went and farmed. They sharpened their hoes and went and farmed. When it was time for war, all men sharpened their spears and went to war. If it was time to hunt, all men sharpened their bows and arrows. They went and hunted together. And the women, they had their duties. The children also had their duties. We looked after our family's cattle. We had it. We had boys. I don't know if General Anunnaki will remember if he looked after cattle. I grew up looking after cattle. Is the tasks that we got as young boys. And then the girls had their own tasks. They were taught by their parents how to, their mothers in particular, because the men will train the boys and the women will train the girls. Education took time and it was holistic. It wasn't just that you're going to study science here, you're going to study maths, biology. It was holistic, all right? You had to learn governance, to interaction with your elders, with the men at court, the court. That is how the education was. So we didn't have specialization. If you read Guns, Gems, and Steel, it shows where the Europeans sort of bettered us, because they started to build a standing army. They built standing armies, hence those who were farmers started producing more, and in a way that enabled the army to be specialist as the army. But I think the wars they had here in Europe also sharpened them to the extent to where they were. But in Africa, it was different. Well, there were traders. There were people who traded and did stuff, but generally Africans were like that and did not discriminate based on what the job someone was doing. There is Ubuntu, which runs throughout from across the whole society, the fabric of society. That doesn't enable people to be discriminated because of the job that they do. I hope that clarifies it.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's get to Sister Ida. Sister Ida?
I'm sorry. I'm a bit late on it all, so I haven't quite managed to grasp what the reading is fully about. So I think I'll pass at least till later. Thank you.
Okay, please please take your time to also go through the reading. We
I'm
are
trying.
actually thinking in the three readings, the three paragraphs. We've tried them, we've studied the first paragraph, but you're free to share your thinking in the three paragraphs. Where we are getting the Socrates and now Plato coming in, and we are sharing our thinking to understand what's Plato bringing and what Socrates is speaking to, and what Nkrumah arriving at or deducing at based on the arguments previously. So feel free to share your thinking, anybody in our midst. Let me get to Elder Sam. Elder Sam?
Thank you. Thank you. Evening, brothers and sisters. Brother Pigeon, I think most of the inputs have been made, but you know, I always realize something when I follow this, and I think this book, or the aim of this book by Kwame Nkrumah, is based on the fact that the realities he experienced, he is pushing this theory so that we who come behind must be weary of certain things that he might not have been when he was waging the struggle. And for me, especially the part there where he says these philosophers, all of them, despite what they were intellectually engaging their social existence at every given time, and all of them were continuously challenging each other. I think for me, this is a critical aspect for us, revolutionaries, African revolutionaries of today. He is saying to us, look out at all the intellectuals, whatever they put on the table, scrutinize it, check the modification. You know, when we were still out there during the liberation struggle, there was something that some people have forgotten today, which was then called the three worlds theory. Remember, we grew up knowing there were two worlds, the West and the Eastern Bloc. But there was a theory that came that said the three worlds theory. And if you look at the situation, the scenario currently, you can see where the three worlds theory was coming. China, who was part of the people who were talking the two worlds theory, saying it is the West and the East, they came with their theory. And with their theory, they were putting themselves in the same league, in the same class with us, the African continent. And this, you can see, the emergence of this is what Kwame Nkrumah is trying to warn us. There will be people who will modify a given theory only to make themselves to gain the upper hand. And this is where we need to be wary in the revolution. This is where I am saying, but he is saying whatever, whether they were arguing, whether they were modifying, they never kept away from the social conditions that they were facing at each and every given time. So we as revolutionaries today, we should not move away from the social conditions that we are facing at any given time, but we must use all the theories, scrutinize them that are on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Elder. And we will be taking another round of us sharing our thinking as we extend to this. Yes, you bring a very critical aspect of the social condition. And you see in the first paragraph towards the end, it says, in a genuine sense, their philosophy or intellectual reflection of contemporary social conditions. We as Africans, as we advance and look at our conditions today as a society, as a continent, what is our philosophy? And is our philosophy backed up on a social condition? Is the capitalism and the philosophy currently applied in Africa, does it speak to a social condition? And then this brings to our mind the aspect that if we have to change our people and us as a people, we cannot copy paste a philosophy. We must come up with a philosophy that speaks to our social condition. I remember sometimes back, Kuma was saying that for the requirement for a revolution entails a social condition. So you must assess a social condition of a country or a situation in order to respond to it rightfully. Now Africa is no longer in the so-called imperialism or in the so-called colonialism. Africa is currently now fighting neo-colonialism. What is the tactics and the philosophy we must use in order to advance and actually fight neo-colonialism? And this is what Nkrumah was speaking to some other times back. So I want to hear our thinking in regards to that line of their social conditions and philosophy in that respect. Then my key interest will also go to the contrasting view between Socrates and Plato. So anybody want to come in, feel free to come in.
So just to add to what my elder, the Demetau, has said there, materialism. What is materialism in the first place? Materialism is about looking at your environment, the society in which you are living in, and using whatever it is that you have in your environment to make sure you sustain yourself, you sustain all your loved ones, you sustain your society. Is materialism. Hence, the philosophy will also have to come from your surrounding, your environment, the things that you do, economy that you pursue, or trade, or whatever. All that philosophy will have to come from that. And that also includes the laws. It's important, the laws. Why are we still using the common law? The law which came from England, which doesn't apply to us, because we were just told or saddled with this, and we decided not to query it. We decided to be subservient. We became an obedient servant. We continue to do that. It's unfortunate, but the environment is important. The conditions in which you found yourself in is important, and the philosophy, law, everything should have to follow from the society in which you are brought up. That's why they always say African solutions for African problems. I hope that's.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Coco, for bringing this aspect once again. Because I remember what you're trying to say, and this go deep now to us as a continent. When people want to prescribe solutions for us, or when we go out to look for IMF and the rest to provide a solution to our condition, can that really work out for us as a continent or as a people? And in this aspect, you're also bringing something that's make a lot of some senses here in the same line of social condition. Remember, there's sometimes when Nkrumah came and discussed about democracy and socialism, and he advocated for a socialist society. And I think, Brother Koko, you've also been several times speaking against democracy. And do you think us applying such practices do really speak to our condition? And that's why there's an aspect to when Nkrumah says that we Africa are natural socialists. In nature, we are not the so-called democrats or capitalists in nature. So I think that's also speaking some a lot of sense here, that any philosophy, any ideology you have to take forward as a people must speak to our social conditions. And that must be very important to this. Anything else in regards to that, or anybody want to come in?
Absolutely. No, as an economist, I saw the IMF policies a long time ago. It was interesting because what they were doing is they were designing them straight out of Washington and then coming in and trying to impose them in our countries. So as a young economist in Lesotho, I hosted some of those IMF officials. Funny enough, you'll find that most of these guys, they held PhDs in economics. But they came in, they didn't have a clue about our countries. They didn't have a clue about our countries. But they'll come in and impose those conditions in our countries as prescriptive as they could be. So it didn't work. But I think it was by design that it wouldn't work. It was meant to weaken our economies and make sure we were kept in perpetual debt. And the spiral of, downward spiral. So hence, with the debt is a new form of slavery, enslavement of the African people. So it was never meant to work. I think even Piolo Lumumba talks about one child, when I say a child, it was a young man who went to Tanzania and he was in trouble because everyone was looking at him and saying, what do you think you're saying here? What have you brought here? And he had to protect him because he was just a messenger at the time. So what happened in the end is that the IMF started using what was called the poverty reduction and strategy papers. In these poverty reduction and strategy papers, it was a consultative tool in which different sectors within the economy, we came together and said, this is what we think will work for us. This is what we think is relevant for our industry, relevant for our region, city, wherever you were. I don't know where that PRSP is now because I haven't been in touch for quite a while, but I think it became part of the National Development Plan. But it is how it has to be done. If you as the people want to develop, you know what is important or what you need as a people. But for someone to come from somewhere else and come and impose things on you, again, is that master-slave relationship. It's the same as what they did with the borders, the boundaries. The Berlin boundaries were drawn by European men who hadn't even set foot in Africa. It's how sad it is. But then the OAU decided to protect those boundaries because they were scared that if they pulled them down or started redrawing them, then it will lead to conflict within the African countries. So they had to do all kinds of, interventions, subventions, just not to unite. It's that. The simple solution was there. Unite. When you unite, you don't have to fight over a boundary, do you?
Okay. There's a second aspect here I want to.
Sorry, you asked me about democracy and I hadn't answered. About democracy is not African, and democracy is not in our interest. In fact, it's not in anybody's interest. Even for the Americans themselves or the Europeans, the UK here, it's not in our interest. Let's not forget who wins and who loses. There is always a loser in democracy. Why should people lose in democracy if the system is meant to protect them? There is always a divide and rule which is being used under democracy. Democracy is a Trojan horse. It's meant to be there to help the big corporates put their influence through. They use the lobbyists. They pay for whoever party wins in the end. It's the same in America. It's a big business. Nothing else. There's nothing good I can say about democracy, unfortunately.
Thank you. Just to put your thinking in context, permit me to. I've gone back a bit to highlight the words we read about Nkrumah's position on democracy, but I think it was up a bit in this text, which he said. Let me highlight it so that I can read it, and then I go back to our conversation which you're having. Yeah, he says that the distinction between his view and that of the monist is, if given socialist expression, became the distinction between socialism and democracy. Whereas in a democracy, it is sufficient to affirm a mere egalitarianism. In socialism, it is necessary to affirm a convertible involvement of each in all. In other words, whereas the monist, in a social term, sought to transform an oligarchic society into a democratic one, Anaxagoras sought to transform a democratic one into a socialist society. So that's basically the thinking up there in regards to this. But thank you, Brother Coco, for sharing that. I want to get back to, I'll take another round to just get members thinking in regards to this second aspect. Plato is bringing a contrary opinion in equality here. Contrary opinion to what Socrates was giving before. What is your thinking in regards to these contrary opinions? Which one do you support? Because Plato says here, in the third paragraph, part of the first line says that Plato was no believer in the fundamental equality of men. He held to the original inequality of men, which an unrelenting educational system will quickly reveal it. He held that some men had a higher reason than others, and though education might up to a point conceal them, these differences were bound to reveal themselves after a certain stage of a thorough-going education. These differences in the level of intelligence, according to Plato, implied a natural division. So before I go to the natural aspect, let me just first of all get to that, contrary to what Socrates was bringing and other philosophers have been bringing on equality of men in a society. So what is your thinking in regards to that? And let me start my list by back to Sister Myra. Then I go to Brother Carrington. Sister Myra?
What was the question?
The question is, what is your thinking in regard to this contrasting view of Socrates and Plato on egalitarianism?
I think I would lean towards Socrates, because I believe everyone in society should be given an equal chance, as dignity to humanity. Whatever they want to become, we've become a society that judges others by how much money they have. Do they sit in an office? Or what kind of job do they do? What colonial education have they got? How many degrees? But that's all superficial. Do you see your brother or sister as a human being? Do you believe that they deserve dignity, honor, humanity, compassion? I think everyone deserves that. So I would lean towards Socrates, and also just to say that I really, really refute the pseudoscience of some humans are more intelligent than other humans, because all that there was a lot of false justifications that were made by the oppressors and the enslavers, and all that was to justify their racism, to make it more palatable for them to participate in the evil that was slave trade and dehumanization of other people. That was all. It's a pseudoscience, it's a fake science, and really, we ought to really understand that and know that, no, we are all human beings who deserve dignity, and no human being deserves to be used as a beast, seen as an animal, seen as lesser or beneath. No. So, Brother Pigeon, I lean towards Socrates, and not because based on education. I know people that are much wiser than other people that have 500 PhDs and precious degrees or live in big mansions. We've seen how these big rich men have totally destroyed our continent. Are they wise because they have money? No. Do they see other human beings, other fellow Africans as brothers and sisters? No. So who's wiser? So let us be mindful about what we're using to judge who deserves what and who is more deserving of riches or whatever. We're all human. So I lean towards Socrates. I yield.
Okay, thank you. You remind me, somebody told me that there's a difference between learned and being educated and being learned. And it was a funny thing because even the pastor who was telling me that could not even understand the difference.
Exactly.
Let me get to Brother Carrington. What's your thinking in these contrary opinions of egalitarianism as per Plato, Socrates? What is your thinking in regards to this?
I think Brother Pigeon, the man was telling you could not even tell the difference.
Yeah, that pastor left school before class 8. So he was telling me that a learned person is the person who is wise. And wise means that he has some tricks. He's not going to school, but he's wise. He's learned. While
Street
educated
smart.
person is somebody who went to school. But here, lawyers calling themselves learned friends. So does it mean they didn't go to school, or the pastor couldn't understand the difference, but he was trying to bring the difference to defend his ignorance in any way. But yes, Brother Carrington, kindly proceed.
Yeah. Before we distinguish their two positions, let's try to reproduce them. And please feel free to add if I've forgotten something. I think we have explored Socrates a bit. The Osajef has explored Socrates in his belief in egalitarianism, even using the example of the slave boy as an example of that this slave boy is capable intellectually, physically, morally, socially, as has been pointed out that there are multiple forms of intelligence really, to function in the society as a full, possibly citizen of the Athenian state, or yes, Socrates was an Athenian. Plato, as a student of Socrates, tries to engage with this more I think in one of his books, I think The Republic, basically analyzing forms of government and coming to the conclusion that a democracy will basically degenerate to rule by the mob. And since Plato, as an elite intellectual of his society, like most of us here, by the way, is skeptical of the ability of the mob to govern itself, concludes that democracy will eventually degenerate, let alone radical forms of democracy like socialism. even simple forms of democracy will eventually degenerate, where people get to vote for a specific moral or political decision that the city-state ought to take. And for this reason, Plato, I want us to see his logic before I say my problems with it. For this reason, Plato then says this. In the same way, in a classroom, we cannot exchange prefects every hour. Let us invest a little bit of power to the wise, intelligent people, i.e. the technocrats, who will then guide society to the best of their ability. And since these people, the technocrats, represent the best we have to offer, they will guide society in the best way possible. And this is why Plato, according to the Osagefo, betrays this program of his teacher, well, the egalitarian program of his teacher. So, two concerns. To a large extent, in Western and even some African nation states, this thing of rule by the intellectuals has been played out, right? For example, Robert Mugabe, to my suspicion, remains one of the most educated Africans in history. With catastrophic consequences for Zimbabwe, sadly. The ANC, in its prime, the Kenya African National Union of Kenya, in its prime, ZANU in its prime, was full of intellectuals and ideological Pan-Africans and all this stuff. And when these groups of people were invested with power, the only thing this African nationalist generation ended up doing is trying to reproduce European forms of governance, the technocrats, in Africa, with an amplified form of corruption and an amplified form of entitlement. And Kenya is benefiting in case of the positive aspects of this program and also suffering from the positive aspects, from the negative aspects of this quote-unquote African nationalist program. So we have run this experiment in Africa that Plato proposed. And for the most part, it has not worked as well as we intuited it would, right? And therefore, we have to start interrogating ourselves. Maybe it wasn't a very wise thing to throw away the elders. Yes, who are not educated in the ways of, I don't know, the West, or even educated in African philosophy, modern African technology, modern African societies. They're not that educated in modern African sociology, but nonetheless deeply understand the society. Maybe it was a silly thing to throw these elders away. Maybe it was a silly thing to try to co-opt them in modern political organizations. Now, for this reason, I would then lean towards Socrates for this exact reason. Now, last point. Science and intelligence of individuals, science and intelligence of groups of individuals or races of individuals. There's a common statistics that you people normally see in Twitter, in Facebook, IQ mapped by countries. And of course, you will see that Africa is very, very low, not very, very low, a bit lower than others. Yeah. It's not that America is doing amazingly well either, but Africa is a bit lower than others. And this is used to justify the fact that there are racial, ethnic, sometimes cultural differences in intelligence. I would like to point out that these statistics first, the methodology is suspect. You can go and read the papers. The methodology is a bit suspect. Secondly, the data was collected sometimes on malnourished African children, and therefore malnourished African children have difficulties in cognitive development, just like anywhere else in the world. And this is true invariant of where you are in the world. And secondly, again, this has played itself out. It has been established right now because there are enough populations of West Africans who have immigrated to the United Kingdom and the United States of Africans, West Africans in particular, and nowadays East Africans too and Southern Africans, such that Nigerians and Ghanaians, especially in the United States, are the most academically accomplished population in terms of exams and even in terms of cognitive abilities, not just passing examinations, but cognitive abilities in the United States. So it is becoming clearer, and it will become clearer with the time as Africa becomes wealthier and is able to afford nutritious food for its population, that these statistics are more a contingent on history than reality or science, as we say. And therefore, it is, technically speaking, a pseudoscience. And that is why, as we speak right now, nurses from Ghana, doctors from Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, are the most highly sought out medical practitioners apart from the ones from Indonesia and India. So this has played itself out. What this will then lead me to conclude is that intellectual capacity is a function of historical conditions, economic conditions, and social conditions, which then tells us exactly what we need to do. You need to make sure that your children in practice and our children in Africa are eating well and are eating nutritiously. KFC is not nutritious. And that every effort is made to educate them. And then this will then manifest itself as an intellectual explosion in the continent. And this is what I would like to do. So I really wanted to address that as clearly as I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you leave us on a highway, but it's okay. You've shared your thinking in regards to what you feel in regards to Plato's aspect of egalitarianism vis-a-vis the Socrates aspect of egalitarianism. Welcome, Brother Kwame, our chair. Oh, okay. You'll catch up with us as you move along, Brother Kwame. But feel most welcome. And I was still in this aspect of this, people sharing their thinking in regards to what Plato is putting here as his aspect of egalitarianism vis-a-vis what we've been discussing as Socrates and Anaximander bringing the egalitarianism aspect. So that's where we are, and yeah, I feel most welcome. We've covered the 3 paragraphs in reading, but we've been going through paragraph per paragraph to see how we explore some aspects that are coming out very clearly as we hear and share our thinking as a group. As individual, yeah, that's what to do. So I'm still onto this. Brother Coco. But before I go to Brother Sister Mera spoke, Brother Carrington, Sister Ida. Sister Ida, you didn't share your thing in the first aspect. Now that this is almost coming clearly, what is your thinking in this aspect of Plato's egalitarianism vis-a-vis Socrates, or any other thinking you want to share?
I've been very interested in what has been said so far, and I do like what Brother Carrington has just added, in that I think that everybody cannot have the same intellect, just either by the way they're brought up, what they eat, whatever. I agree that everybody may be born equal, but along the way, the equality of people shows up in different ways. And I think after listening to all that everybody has said, I think that those who have been intellectually, like what Brother Carrington said about all the people who have at the beginning shown a lot of intelligence as they climb the ladder to their country's success or start of independence. I think that when I look at what is going on in the Sahel states, and you look at the people of the past who were all about, oh, you know, they were intelligent, so they were top of the tree. I like what let me get his name right. Anyhow, says about, he talks to his people. Okay, he might have got there through a coup and all the rest, but he talks to his people about people eating grass. And I think the difference between him and a lot of people who are in power is that they see the people who suffer.
Is that Traore you're talking about, Sister?
Yeah,
Traore?
Traore, yes. They see and understand the effects of people who are really suffering in their country and want to do something about it. I think why I wouldn't say all people were necessarily equal in intelligence is that some people may have almost photographic memories, but their ability to feel for other people is not necessarily there. And I think that is that maybe could also be part of the reason why some people don't see wrongs that go on in the world. They just see power as a way of climbing certain steps. It doesn't matter if they climb on other people to get where they want to go. So I think there's different sorts of values and intelligence, that some people may be endowed with intelligence, but they're not endowed with social social respect for others. Even with Ubuntu, you find that not everybody has that social well-being for another person. So I think that's though I haven't linked everything to these passages, I have linked it to what we've been saying. And that is what I would see as being maybe the difference between all people are born equal and Socrates' belief in, oh dear, something's just coming. What did Socrates believe? And Socrates thinking slightly different. And I do think that's in every generation, people will change their stance on things. So, sorry.
It's Plato who is having a contrary opinion to egalitarianism, who he doesn't believe that there's actually that equality in people, but rather he allude these to other aspects. And that's maybe probably what's also very interesting as we start thinking. These Platos believe in natural hierarchy of labor. What's your thinking in regards to the same? Because I think that's also what's coming up here.
Hierarchy of labor. I think that some people will not ever get the opportunity to have an education when they're very young, but people pick up all sorts of education as they go along, and in fact excel at it as they grow older. So I don't think that this bit about equality, I think is a bit of a myth. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Brother Kwame, feel free to come in anytime. We did the first round of people sharing their thinking, and we moved to the second round because we were sharing our thinking basically on the first paragraph. We moved to the second paragraph and tying to the third paragraph as we share our thinking as well. So feel free to come in anytime, Brother Kwame. Elder Sam,
Hello, hello.
what's your thinking in these contra reviews of Plato and Socrates, and also this aspect that there's a natural order, the universe put in a natural order of where you want to belong to. You're either naturally, it's trying to say you're either naturally a fool or naturally wise. Or you're either naturally a farmer. What's your thinking in this?
Brother Pigeon and members, I think we already passed this aspect, you know, as we were coming with this philosophies from right from the beginning. And this is where I was saying in my earlier input, what the author Jeff is trying to show us is that even you have two people who are equals, who are sharing the same views about things. Somewhere along the way, there are people who tend to tweak, modify something that even the two were agreed to, and you tweak something and it turned into something else. And this is where in these theories that we have, that people came to come with this word of revisionism, where somebody just tweaked the socialist theory into something that is semi and want to push it. And this is where Plato is trying to do, turning away from something that they had already passed that stage where the theory of egalitarianism of people has been agreed to. But as they argue for their self-interest, there will always be these individuals that tweak these things here and there. You know, a typical example is the ANC of South Africa. The ANC of South Africa, the first liberation movement on the continent, was the wisest, full of all the intellectuals you have, but they went along the way tweaking the Pan-Africanist outlook that they had, the total liberation of the African majority that they had. They came with something that said South Africa belongs to all who live in it. They came with that theory in 1955. From 1912 to 1955, they went on tweaking this theory. And currently, even today, the intellectuals of them all, the former President Thabo Mbeki, still insist, who is our people in South Africa? And this is where you will see that intellectualism, it is good, it is there, but society should not totally base everything on intellectualism. Wisdom and concrete condition that those, everybody that has any theory, that theory must give solutions to the challenges that the people are looking at any given time. Thank you.
Thank you. Brother Kwame?
I am listening. Yeah, I'm listening to what brothers and sisters are saying.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Raspala. Yara Anunnaki. I know you might have shared your thinking in the previous aspect, but what's your thinking in those three aspects that are now coming out clearly, including that one of the contrary views of Plato and Socrates on the egalitarianism? This aspect of Plato's believing that there's a natural hierarchy of labor, and this concept of totalitarianism of intellectuals. Please feel free to share your thinking with
Yes,
us.
my lord. Yeah, give thanks, son of the lake. Yeah, like I preluded earlier, my lord, I said that I agree with what Plato is saying, not what his ideology is based on, you see, on this thing of hierarchy of labor. And I made an example that our ancient ancestors, if you can remember on our, I think the meeting before our previous, I spoke about the history of our ancestors when I said that it started 445,000 years ago. That is before even Asians and white people existed. And there were cities with waters, sewage systems, everything modern. They were there in those times. So you can imagine if we had cities 445,000 years ago, then obviously we had people who are working in different jobs. We had people who were working in the sewers. We had people working in the dams, because even River Nile is not a natural phenomenon. River Nile was created by our ancestors. So we had specialized engineers who did River Nile, you see. So that's why I said that I agree with Plato on this thing of labor, but I do not agree on this thing of him that people are not equal. No, I agree with Socrates on egalitarianism. But now this thing Plato is saying here of the hierarchy of labor is true, because that is what our ancestors were doing in the history. You see, even to them, when we created them 200,000 years ago, first thing after we had studied and see that, okay, they can be programmable, we took them to the mines in Witwatersrand, which are the mines here in Gauteng, you see. Then the name Gauteng most basically means place of gold. So that's why we took them to go and mine, you see. So you can see already there's a division of labor there. Why? Because there are some of our ancestors who are the engineers, scientists, they started to rebel against those in the royal places, those who were the princes, you see. They started to rebel because the labor on the mines were very hard on their backs, you see. So they went to rebel by this labor is too much. And then the great scientist, Enki, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to close there. But the great scientist, Enki, what he did, he said, okay, let's create a human being. And then they mixed our genome with the genome of the Homo erectus of Africa. Voila, we had human beings, and they went to mine. You see, so yeah, it's just like, it's like that. I agree on those terms. I'm more on Socrates. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying on this paragraph of Plato, when he's saying the hierarchy of labor was something that was is an ideology that is viable, I agree on that thing. It's something that happened before. Blessed.
Blessed Ras. Well, no, the human being came from a mixture of Homo erectus. I'll be interested to learn this, brother Ras Pala. Please share with me articles that can help me learn this. Yes, brother Mfanela, no, I know you came a bit late, but are you able to share your thinking with us in regards to the text you've been reading?
Greetings, Kings. Yes, I'm forever ready.
Okay, please proceed.
I'm forever ready to share. So this is, this is my position. I think I always take all of these, analysis and bring it here. For me, how does it relate to just Africa, where I'm born and how I grew up? Ubuntu as a principle. So what I can accept is that every human being is equal. That is the truth. All of us are level. In other words, the earth belongs to all of us, 8 billion of us. We are equal shareholders of the earth. Nobody has a higher right than the other. One man, one vote, as far as shareholdership of the earth. Now, however, I have to accept that the fact that I am talented in one aspect, another person is talented on another aspect, it does not make one higher than me. It just means this one is a fish, he can swim in water, but I'm a monkey, I can climb trees. So we have to then understand that in the ecosystem in nature, every species has its own place. Everybody has their own purpose. So the purpose of one is not inferior to the other. But in a balance in the ecosystem, the end is as important as the cattle on the ground, because without the end, you're not going to have the grass. So the ant does the job of burrowing the grass, bringing oxygen to the roots, so that then there is fertile ground and the roots can breathe, so that the cattle can eat. So if we undermine the end and say the elephant is greater, then the elephant will not be there without the end. So it's the same thing with bees. So every species has its own place. So you can never say just because you are good in singing, we're gonna say singing is the best thing. It's the upper class. Or you are good at sweeping, so sweeping is a bad thing. You are a lower class. No, work is work. Everybody has talent. We just need to understand that all people doing what they do in their space, it's perfect. It's just like music in an orchestra. Everybody playing their note at the right time. So everybody is equal, even with your diversity, even with your gifts and talents. Everybody must be heard. So you can't say this 10% must make decisions for the rest. No, that is not right. In Ubuntu, in a crawl, in a community, all the villages are invited. The man comes sit in the crawl. Even the one who does not have the kettle has the right to come and raise his stupid opinion if he's stupid. But he has a right to be heard and say his contribution. Now, in the collective part of those decisions, when everybody is heard and respected, then we make a resolution. So I do not believe in a community where some people must exalt themselves above others and be entitled, therefore, to rule over others. There's no such a thing.
Thank you.
I thank you.
Thank you, Brother Mfanera. Thank you very much for that, sharing your thinking with us. Sister Abigail, are you in a position now to share your thinking with us? Sister Abigail? Sister Abigail, kindly unmute yourself. If you're not able to share your thinking with us, then we'll move to Brother Kwame. Okay. Brother Kwame, please come in. We've gone this, and this was the second round. We are going to the reading on specific aspects as well. So, Brother Coco is here. You want to share something? Brother Coco?
Yeah, you had skipped me for the second round.
Oh,
you gave everyone else the second round, but not me.
sorry. Yeah, second round was very specific to those aspects I've raised, and please feel free to
Yeah.
come on the egalitarianism between Socrates and Plato, on the aspect of natural order in a society, and on the aspect of totalitarianism of intellectuals. Please feel free.
All right. First, Queen Abigail will share when the time is right. I think she's getting used to how we do things.
And thank you for inviting her. I believe she came from the New Africa Agenda.
Yes, New Pan-African Agenda. Thank you.
Feel most welcome, sister.
Yes. I have a story to tell. This story starts with the village. This village were meant to do work. And then everyone started claiming, oh, I'm better than X, Y, Z. W say I'm better than V. So for instance, the brain said, I am the one who does all of the thinking here. So I should be crowned as the best worker in this village. The hands say, I am the one who holds all the tools. The feet say, oh, I walk, I carry all of you here. Everybody was claiming they were the best. Then there is one person who does a very important job at the back, who holds the whole body intact. And he said, I am also important. And this person is called the Enas. The Enas say, I'm also important. And everybody laughed at him and said, the Enas. That's where every bad thing goes through. That's where shit goes through. Why do you say you are the most important? Then what happened is there was a feast in the village. People ate, had fun. And then in the end, then they had to go and offload. But the owner said, it's my turn to show that I am important. I'm as equally important as all of you. He refused to cooperate. the whole village was in a mess. The whole village was sick. The body was sick because of one body part, which everyone else looked down on. I hope you get this message, right? It means everyone has a purpose and everyone is equal, regardless. So having said that, there's another bit here which I have to drive home in that we in my language they say you cannot teach a monkey to dance. It will dance better than you. So let's not forget Socrates taught Plato, but in the end Plato went on and did things in his own way for his own gratification, I would say. But what Plato is doing there is not different from what we are seeing nowadays. So education was used to undermine egalitarianism. And in manufacturing consent, Chomsky, Herman, and Said actually proved that. We go through the electoral cycle of 5 years in which we, delegate our sovereignty to a few people who then go ahead and do whatever they want to do because we are too either not interested. I think that is the basis of manufacturing consent. They say the general society is not fit for this job. They are not really good enough to do this job, so we'll do it for them. That's why it's called manufacturing consent, because they get the consent to rule over us, do everything they want over us. Over that 5 years, they only come back after 5 years to get the consent. It's more or less the same thing. That's the totalitarianism that is mentioned there. So moving away from there, lots of people talked about education here, but let's not forget, you're talking about intellectual quotient. I said to you, let's not be drawn to that. It's not the only form of intelligence that's available. There are several intelligences available. And let's not forget again what IQ is based on. IQ is usually Eurocentric or Western-based form of theory or whatever is happening in that setting. Again, we're coming back to the social setting in which that education is being carried out. So we can't say the Africans had low IQ. Was that test relevant to the Africans? No, it wasn't, because the Africans were not taught that. They're not being asked on stuff that they learned. We need to remember that. And socialism. Education is undermining socialism, because under socialism, we are all equal. We are all sharing and contributing equally and getting out equally. But with the education, they use an excuse to make sure certain others can get higher than the others by claiming they are not equally gifted as I am. That's where the problem is the basis of socialism and capitalism. I mean, the basis of capitalism that we see today is entrenched in this thinking by Plato. Thank you.
Thank you. We are about around 8 or 10 minutes to come to the end of our class. But let me allow Sister Abigail to say something before we move to Brother Kwame. Sister Abigail? Sister Abigail, you indicated in the chat that you want to say something. Yes, and yeah, proceed.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Like Coco said, I'm just a little bit very new in this topic. So I'm not sure if I'm commenting it right or wrong, but allow me just to comment what I have in my mind right now. So in regards to
Sister, you're muted.
Sister Abigail, you are muted. Unmute yourself so that you can proceed. Sister Abigail, you are muting and unmuting yourself.
I think you start to remove her mute button.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Hope she managed it. Okay, let's go to Brother Kwame. Brother Kwame, just come in.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, yeah, so I've been listening. It's good sometimes to listen, to listen to others. And that's the advantage of not sharing. You can listen to what others have to say. So Plato, who was a student of Socrates, rejected Socrates' position on human equality. Yeah, so Socrates believed in the fundamental equality of men and women, and Plato rejected it. So capitalism, which is a global system of white supremacy that currently is, if you like, governing the world through its international and transnational institutions like the World Bank and the UN and so on. So those institutions, which are underpinning global capitalism and its domination of Africa. So we can understand these as an extension, if you like, of Plato's view of the world. Because Plato, as you know, did not believe in human equality. Capitalism does not believe in human equality. So if you take America, for instance, you can see that those ruling America are the same people. The political parties of Republican and Democrats are an illusion of choice. The forces that control the two parties are the same, but they give an illusion that you are making a choice. That is the same people. And then you are fooled into thinking that you are the one, or you are the people who are making decisions as to who is the president. I mean, as we speak, we know that Biden is cognitively not there, yet America is being run. So who is running America? Brother Foucault spent a lot of time, if you recall, talking to us about those people who are running. Some call it the deep state. Some call it those running society from the shadows, because they don't like democracy, and so they are an expression of Plato. So when Brother Kafra Nkrumah, you remember, Brother Joseph has also somehow disappeared. And that's one of the challenges we are having, that some come and then they find the discussions really heavy. And Brother Kafra's position, you recall, was that he didn't like the fact that we seem to be spend a lot of time on Greece. But then forgetting that if we understand Greece, ancient Greece, that we will understand what it is that we face. And so Plato, he believed in the class system, the rigid class system. He did not believe in the classless society. In this country, England, there was once a prime minister called John Major who talked about the classless society. We still haven't achieved it yet. How you can have a classless society in a monarchy is everyone's guess. But he believed in a class system. which we've all been looking at. He believed in limited social mobility. He did not believe in social mobility for all. Yes, there'll be some movement of classes here and there, but on the whole, you remain, if you are in the working class, not working class the way it is used in Nigerian films. In Nigerian film, you're a working class. They are using it in a different way. We're talking about the class system. And so you find that they'll give scholarships here and there for the children of poorer people to gain scholarships to what they call Ivy League universities. But the ruling class controls these universities, and their children are those who go there. Their children are not the cleverest, and that's the problem. Just because you are rich doesn't mean your children will be very clever. Just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean your children will be the cleverest in any school. Sometimes the children of the poorest turn out to be the cleverest in the class. Those who get the highest marks sometimes in national exams come from a village and a school where nobody has even heard about that school, and yet they get the highest mark. There's a school here in Dulwich run by, at the time, last time I looked, run by a black principal, a secondary school. And a lot of poor children go there. And yet, in England, their performance is top. They challenge the elite schools, the elite schools, and the schools that where the children of very rich people send their children, called private schools, where they pay thousands of pounds a year to have their children educated. And yet this is a public school, and yet their performance challenges these schools. And so they are afraid of this school, because the school is showing that you don't have to be rich to get the best marks. And Plato did not believe in equal rights either. Because if you believe in a rigid class system, it means you don't believe in equal rights. So like in Animal Farm, some animals are more equal than others. He certainly did not believe in gender equality. Yes, some roles for women in the guardian class. So you can have a queen as the head of states in England. It doesn't mean that women are all equal. You can have a prime minister called an Iron Lady who is running a government, but the whole government is full of men. So women can rise to the top, but the patriarchal system is still in place. And Plato viewed women as generally inferior to men, something that is an anathema to the African worldview. If you look at ancient African worldview, the woman is almost like God. She is a creator of the race. She is the one that brings into birth. She's the one that recreates or procreates society. Therefore, she is divine. She's special. She must be protected. And that's why those who go to war are always men, and the women are there, are protected. In Dahomey, we are told that there were women warriors, but then there will be women warriors because they also want to defend society in a certain way. Plato rejected democracy. He did not believe in it. What do we see today? Those societies that are the epitome of Western, whatever you want to call it, are the same people who reject democracy. America will go around the world overthrowing elected governments through its criminal organization, the CIA. How can a country that believes in democracy go around overthrowing democratically elected governments? From Nkrumah in 1957, first of all, they were in Iran, overthrew the Iranian government, in the elected government there. They killed Patrice Lumumba, murdered him, just go around murdering people, violating human rights. So such people they don't believe in democracy. So they reject democracy. And that's what you see. And the transnational system that is affirming the violation of human rights, you know, the killing of women and children in thousands. You know, how any sane human being can think it is right to kill women and children in thousands? You can only attribute that to people who are Platonic, do not believe even in equal human rights. They don't believe in gender equality. They don't believe in democracy, you know, and that's what apartheid was about. Apartheid never believes in democracy for everyone. Apartheid only believes in democracy if it believes in it at all for the few. Everybody else is dominated. So you see that today. And then you see eugenic policies. It came from Plato, the idea that you must breed special people, you know, breeding policies for the guardian class. This is not the Nazis. The Nazis got their eugenic philosophy from Plato, you know, and you have to be of the Aryan race. You know, you have blue eyes, you know, you have to have blue eyes, blonde hair. Otherwise, you're not part of the guardian class or the supreme human race. And before he went too far in the eyes of even those who supported him, you know, they thought people thought Germany was the epitome of civilization. You know, and this eugenic thing came from Plato. So the problems we are seeing in the world today, hopefully now being challenged by BRICS. This is why BRICS is important for us. Apart from South Africa, other African countries are asleep. You know, they haven't seen the light yet. They're happy to go to China and take a picture with the president of China. When China is in BRICS, they don't see it because they are still asleep. Yeah. So a new world order is dialectically coming into being. And the reason we are told that Iran is not attacking Israel or retaliating against Israel is because they want BRICS to succeed. That is a greater strategic objective than retaliating against that genocidal maniac and murderer and killer of women and children called Netanyahu. So that is my contribution. Africa, where do we go from here? Our brothers here have spoken a lot. Brother Sam has made his point. General has made a point. Brother Koko has made a point, and our brothers and sisters have made a point. You know, that there's a need there's a need for us. We are the light of Africa. I don't know whether we realize that. The only light of Pan-Africanism that lighted the whole continent was Nkrumah's Concisism. We are the only ones studying it, reading it, discussing. We are the light of Africa, and hopefully what we are discussing here will hopefully enter the mainstream. Otherwise, they're all asleep. There's the Sahelian states are waking up, but even they are also partly asleep. No African country or group of African countries can make it unless we all unite. That is the bottom line. How many of us have not heard our mothers tell us, take a broomstick, break it, and it breaks? And our mother tells us, take a broom, try and break the broom, and it doesn't break. You know, it's not they said. My mother put a broomstick in my own hand and then put a broom in my hand, my mother. And I'm sure all of you here, your mothers have also taken you through such rituals. I will end there. Thank you. Brother Pigeon, we can't hear you because you are muted if you are speaking.
Speaking. I was just waiting you to finish up because we were coming to the end of the class. But you are.
I finished. I said I'll end there.
Okay, then permit us to end here because already we are some minutes past our actual class. And we'll pick up from here in our next class next Thursday. Permit me also to appreciate the presence and the contribution for each and every one of us who has been able to share something with us or even attend our class today. So let's meet again next Thursday as we proceed and continue from where we left it. And on this Saturday, we will have still the Africa unification conversation. We might have a guest speak on one or two topic, but the back of our mind, just be prepared and be aware that our conversation about the unification of Africa is what will continue this Saturday. I'll be able to share the link with you, and I'll also share the recording for the previous last week. Is already on our YouTube channel, but I'll be able to share it via directly via our broadcast list. So once again, thank you all, and let's meet on Saturday and on Thursday. Have a blessed evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Good night.
Thank you, kings and
Good
queens.
night, guys. Thanks.